Well, if you don't know me, my name's Gordon. I'm pastor here at Vita, and we're going to keep going in our series in the book of John. And so go ahead and grab your own Bible. If you don't have one, there's Bibles underneath the seat in front of you. You can pull that out, and the page number and the verses are up on the screen behind me. We're in John chapter 5, and I'm going to start with the story. So a month ago, my family, wife and two little girls, 2.5 years old and 1 year old. We took a family vacation. We drove all the way to Pennsylvania, and we drove all the way back. And on the way back, we planned a pit stop in North Carolina, and the youngest 1 year old threw up like 3 or 4 times in the car seat, like all over her. And then we're like 2 minutes away from the Airbnb where we're getting ready to stop. And then our 2.5-year-old throws up all over herself and all over the car. And so we pull into the Airbnb, and that's just that. Our kids have been sick before, but that was kind of the worst. And to see a 2.5-year-old's brain trying to process, like confused and scared, and what is that feeling inside? And then you know what the feeling of throwing up's like. It's awful. And so anyway, more than like, obviously we're like, oh man, we got to clean the car seats in the car. But worse than that was just feeling compassion for our girls. And so then like 4 more times that night, our 2.5-year-old is like, we put her on an air mattress in the room, and I slept in that room separately. And it was interesting. I have a hard time waking up when my alarm goes off in the morning. But when I heard the initial, like, her about to puke again, I was up pretty quick. But yeah, I felt a lot of compassion because my daughter was suffering and confused and couldn't make sense of why it was happening. And in the story in John today, we're looking at a man who is suffering. He's been lame for 38 years. And then he meets Jesus, and Jesus heals him. And it's much, much more than just a story about a lame man who gets to walk again. The title gives it away. It's about a sufferer who is made whole again. So there's 3 things that jump out in the story as we look at it today that we'll kind of walk through. Number 1, Jesus did heal this man's suffering body, and he will heal all suffering bodies of those who trust in him. He will. Number 2 that we'll see in the story, he did restore this man's suffering soul, and he will restore suffering souls. And then the 3rd, Jesus began the work of restoring his suffering creation, and he will restore fully his suffering creation. In the end, everything will be made right, redeemed, made whole, complete. There's a verse in Philippians 1, verse 6. Paul says to the Philippian Christians, I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ, that final day when Jesus comes back to make all things right. And that word complete, completion, that's going to be a big word today, so listen out for it. But it's a hopeful message for Christians today, and a hopeful message for everybody who is here looking to Jesus, seeking what he can offer you. One thing to finish that story about our daughter who's sick. After that story, after that vacation, we started telling a story to her to help her process what's happening about the little girl who was sick. And she gets better each day, and the mom and dad take care of her, and she feels safe. And she asked for that story 7 days in a row afterwards. She just wanted to hear the story about the little girl who was sick. And at the end of the story, what we started telling her is, and then the little girl will be in heaven one day, and she'll be with Jesus, where everybody's all better all the time. And that's been a wonderful thing just for us to remember, and as much as her little brain can grasp, everything's going to be all better all the time. So I'm going to, before reading the verses today and teaching, we're just going to give a couple seconds to pause and just quiet our minds, our hearts, get our minds off of all the distractions of life, all the busyness we feel. And so during that quiet, I'm going to pray for me, and I would encourage you, pray for you and ask Jesus to prepare your heart before we hear from him. John chapter 5, verse 1. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water's stirred up, and while I'm going in, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and walked. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and it's not lawful for you to take up your bed." But he answered them, "The man who healed me, that man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Take up your bed and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, as there was a crowd in the place. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him, and this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I am working." This is why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Let's pray. Yeah, Jesus, we look to you for everything. We believe you are creator. You were there in the beginning when creation was perfect. And you are actively restoring your creation back to the way it was. So we pray, whatever you want to do in us today, we give you all access. Our minds, our hearts, our lives. Restore us. Pray all these things in your name. Amen. Now, I forgot to mention in the intro, some backstory is helpful before we get into the verses. If you don't know the whole story of creation and the history of God's people, God created the heavens and the earth, and in the beginning it was good. And he made humans, and they were very good. And you could say creation was complete. It was whole. It needed no restoration. And then when man and woman sinned, sin came into the world, and it corrupted creation, and that's why we have Jesus working to restore. It's not complete, it's not whole, but it will be. And so backstory to keep in your minds as we work through the verses. So let's start in verse 1. After this, there was a feast of the Jews. We don't know which one, but there's a feast. The Jewish people are coming to Jerusalem. Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Verse 2. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, which the Greek word would have just been a common word for like disabled. And so there's a bunch of disabled, blind, lame, paralyzed. Verse 5, one man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. And so John, who's writing this book, is bringing us to a new scene. We're in Jerusalem, and he's introducing us to a new crowd and one man in particular, this one disabled man. In verse 6, it says, Jesus saw this man lying there and knew he had already been there a long time. And so the first thing that we see here is Jesus came into the city, and he comes to an area that was full of disabled people. It shows the mercy and kindness of Jesus, that he doesn't just book it for the temple with his people, the religious elite. He doesn't book it for the cleaned up people. He goes and walks through an area that was full of blind, lame, and crippled. And while he's there, it says he saw one man in particular who was lying there, and he had something revealed to him. He knew that man had been here for a long time. And I just love that word, "and knew," because I think it means more than just he knew that the man had been there for 38 years. I think he knew the man. He knew a lot about him. Psalm 139:16, the psalmist writes about God, about the Lord, "Your eyes saw my unformed substance," like before we were even born. "In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them." And Jesus knows us. And regardless of our condition, regardless of whether we're cleaned up or not, Jesus has mercy on us and doesn't prejudge, doesn't ignore, doesn't write off, doesn't avoid. He loves his people, and he knows his people, and he comes for his people. So Jesus saw this one man in particular. He walks into the pool of disableds, singles out one, and just imagine the man who's been there for 38 years. Most of you are not even 38 years old. I'm not 38 years old. That's a long time. I was thinking about it. I'm pretty sure the oldest person in here is not above 80. If you are, I'm close. But all that to say, half your life crippled, cannot walk. And just imagine what has been spoken to this man throughout his life. What has he heard? How has he been treated? What's his identity? What does he think about himself? Where's his hope? He's just here, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the pool in a second, but he's just here hoping that something about this pool can save him, and it's vain hope. He's stuck. He's helpless. There's no way out. It's not trending in a good direction for the man until Jesus comes. The verses go on. Jesus said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" Now, at first, this might seem like a dumb question. Do you want to be healed? Well, yes, I want to be healed. I wouldn't see it as a dumb or insensitive question. I would see it as a redirecting question, where Jesus is trying to redirect his hopes away from something that cannot promise healing to something more trustworthy or sure, to Jesus. So the pool of Bethesda, it was a superstition that the waters are stirred up, and when they are stirred up, presumably by an angel or something with power to heal, and the first person in the pool gets healed. That's the superstition. And we have no record of that being true or valid. John doesn't seem to paint it that way. It seems like vain hope. And so the man is so helpless, he's putting all his hope in that because that's all he has left, and he's crushed because every time it gets stirred up, because of his lameness, he can't even get in the pool. Someone else gets there first. And so he really is out of options. Then Jesus comes, asks him if he wants to be healed. And it says, verse 7, the sick man, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water's stirred up. While I am going, another steps down." And Jesus says, "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." And at once, the man was healed. At once. And he took up his bed and he walked. So 38 years lame, hope was waning. Jesus comes and just says, "Get up, take up your bed, walk." And the man's healed. The man's not looking for Jesus. It's not a result of the man's faith. It seems like Jesus catches him in the midst of vain hope and looking to something else. And Jesus just decides, this man I want to heal. And he does. Now, it just got me thinking about things that we put our hopes in that are not sure or trustworthy. And we all do in different ways. I think if we just thought about healing, we have the wonderful benefit of living in America, where we have modern medicine, great doctors. I've thought so many times, I am so fortunate to live close to the University of Florida and Shands Hospital, because I meet people that travel hours away to come here, and it's 15 minutes down the road for me. Now, you realize the best of modern medicine cannot promise full restoration and full healing for our bodies. There's lots of things that cannot be cured. The best counselor cannot promise full restoration and healing for our mind or our emotions. I'm not saying those things are bad. Don't hear me wrong. I'm just saying the only thing that can actually promise full restoration and healing is Jesus. And Jesus redirects this man to put all their hopes in him. And for Christians who know Jesus, who know what he promises, we put all of our hopes in him. And if you're not, I hope that today you would realize The best the world can promise us still is vain and hopeless. And only Jesus can give us this hope. It doesn't mean that all your problems are going to be fixed right away or in the way that you want them to, but it does mean they're going to be fixed the best way, in the way Jesus sees best fit. I was really thinking about those of you that there's no way around it. Those of you who are old. I was trying to think of a more gracious way to say it. Your bodies are breaking down. You have more and more appointments. You're suffering, some of you, enduring pain. And a wonderful truth to hold on to is that Jesus Christ will make your bodies completely healed. When he returns and we're in heaven, you get new resurrected bodies. And I don't have to think about it a whole lot, but I know that I will. And I do believe it wholeheartedly. And just want to remind and encourage those of you who have bodily suffering, whatever it is, you get to look forward to one day looking Jesus in the face and him wiping away all your tears, and all your pain is gone. All of your pain is gone. So that's point one. Point two, let's move on. We're actually going to skip ahead to verse 14. This jumps ahead to the next interaction Jesus has with the man after he's healed. Point two, Jesus restores the man's suffering soul. Verse 14. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." Jesus says, "See, you are well." He pronounces healing over the man. Now, in a couple verses later, when the man talks about his healing, he says to the Jews, "The man who healed me," and it literally reads, "the man who made me whole." And then what a wonderful way to put it. I think for this man, it's much, much more than just his broken legs are working again. I think it's much more than just bodily suffering restored. I think this man's suffering soul ends up being restored. Jesus connects his suffering to sin. When he says, "See, you are well, sin no more," I think Jesus is targeting this man of all of them because his suffering was because of sin. And the Bible actually gives us a category. Did you know that? The Bible actually gives us a category for some of our suffering being the result of sin. 1 Corinthians 11 talks about those taking the Lord's Supper in an unworthy manner, and it says that's why some of you are weak, ill, and even some have died. Now, I do not think that all suffering is the result of sin. Don't mishear me. But there is a category for suffering that's the result of someone's personal sin, and I think that's what Jesus is getting at for this man. Now, if that's the case, and Jesus makes his body well and heals him, what is Jesus saying to him? Forgiveness. Forgiveness. See, you are well. So I think Jesus is beginning something much, much more than just bodily restoration. Jesus goes on and he invites the man to turn from his sin. He says, "Lest something worse happen to you." Don't sin anymore. Follow me. Turn from your sin. Listen to my words. Lest something worse happens. And here I think he's talking about hell. If you continue on sinning, you will be separated from God for eternity. And then you will be in permanent physical, mental, emotional, spiritual suffering for all of eternity. And that is far worse than being lame for 38 years. So turn from your sin and live. The other thing that helps me kind of see, I think this is a soul restoration, is simply the man starts out outside the city gates. An invalid or disabled man or woman would not be allowed, especially in the temple, but even inside the city, outside the gate by this pool. And the man ends up, Jesus finds him in the temple. I think there's some symbolism there from the writer, John. Let me just find myself placing my notes again. So Jesus is inviting the man to turn from his sin, come to him, and enjoy complete, total restoration forever. If the man listens to Jesus' words and follows him, his soul will be restored, and he'll have the hope of being fully restored forever in eternity. A couple verses later, John 5, same chapter, verse 24, Jesus says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever hears my words and believes him who sent me has eternal life. He does not come into judgment, but is passed from death to life." So, second takeaway, if you trust in Jesus, he will fully restore your soul. Meaning, your soul. Think about it. We don't see our soul, but we know it's there. That part that when our body dies, it remains. It does little good if your body gets healed, but your soul remains broken, unrestored. If you thought about what a rusty frame in a truck would mean. We don't live in the north where there's snow and salt, but rusty frames in your truck is bad. You can cover it up. You can take your truck to the car wash as many times as you want. You can take it to the body shop. That will not fix the rusty frame. The soul supports your body just like a frame supports the truck. And if your soul is decayed with sin, unrestored, without Jesus, you can clean yourself up all you want. You can try this and try that. You can try to be a good person. You can try religion. You can try to do X, Y, Z. If your soul remains unrestored, you have no hope. You will remain outside the city unless Jesus restores you. And then imagine what happens with a new, restored soul. It supports everything. That means everything in your life bubbles out of your soul. And so with a restored soul, your identity, restored. How you think about yourself, restored. Your thoughts, your thought life, your motives, restored. I'm talking about this a little ideally. It's a slow, long process, isn't it? Sometimes it takes a while. When you're saved, sin doesn't just go away right away. But Jesus restores your soul. You get a new frame. And now you have power to fight against sin that you did not have before. And you have a sure promise where Jesus says, it's as good as done. I've restored you and I will be restoring you. And it's on our end where we're walking with him and learning what he made us to live like. So in this life, we actually get to enjoy life the way that it was intended to be lived. And in the next life, we have the promise of a fully restored soul. Now, Christians, think about what that means. No more struggle with sin. You'll never have to confess again. You'll not have that wayward thought about yourself come into your mind that you have to wrestle with for truth. All that's gone. You won't have those temptations anymore to do what you know is wrong, but you so badly want to do them. No more wrestle between flesh and spirit. Your soul will want to do everything that Jesus says is right. And you'll have perfect harmony and peace between you and Jesus. No more grieving him. No more feeling apathetic or far away or like trying to get back to him. Your soul will be fully restored. You'll be back in the garden walking with him as it was intended. That's what Jesus is saying here through the story. It's much, much more than just a story about a lame man who walks again. Jesus came into his creation, God in flesh. He heals, he gives sight to the blind, he tells the demons to go, he sets free the oppressed. All of these things, not just as little acts in themselves, he's saying to creation, I came to make it right again. I've come to fully restore. Open your eyes and see. The man hopefully sees. If he puts his trust in Jesus, he will get to enjoy all of this. And we'll see a sad reality later. Not everybody sees it. But this is what Jesus is doing. It's that verse I read in the beginning again. Christians, he who began a good work in you he will bring it to completion. I had a story shared with me recently about a woman who is saved by Jesus, finds the Bible in her prison cell. Saved by Jesus, and here's what was sent to me. The woman had a court appearance. Before court ended, the state prosecuting attorney stood up and addressed her, saying, I just want you to know how proud I personally am of you. I had to go in to see whose case we were on because I didn't recognize you at first. Keep doing what you're doing. You may not see your progress day by day, but your overall progress that we can all see is incredible. And the person who sent it gave a little bit more background. When this woman was picked up the last time and taken to jail, she was barely 100 pounds, had 2 black eyes from being beaten up pretty badly. She had hit rock bottom, hopeless. Today, however, she's living fully, nearing completion of her GED, holding steady employment, able to be a mother to her children, the way she's always longed for, and all of this is thanks to Jesus' restoring work in her life. And we forget this, but that's happening all over creation, all throughout time, all around the room. I could count up hundreds, thousands of stories, moments where Jesus has restored what was broken and made it right and new again. Now, this is all building to the last point. We're back in verse 9b. The last point, Jesus will fully restore his suffering creation. John tells us, now that day was the Sabbath. Now, I missed this at first when I was just reading. But the Sabbath, the fact that Jesus did this on a Sabbath day, speaks volumes. This is loaded. It's not John, super clever, including this detail in the story. It's God speaking something by having Jesus heal on a Sabbath day. So, background on the Sabbath. The Sabbath refers to the 7th day where God's people remembered that their Creator, God, worked for 6 days, and then on the 7th day he rested. It was good, it was complete. And the Jewish people would have seen the Sabbath as a day of rest. You can't do all of these things because we're supposed to rest and remember. They're kind of right, but really the Sabbath is about completion. God rested on the 7th day, not because he needed to, not because he was tired. God rested on the 7th day because he could. It was all done. It was finished. It was completed. Sit back and enjoy the fruit of your labor. It's done. Now again, I told you, sin came into the world, and so now there's a need for restoration. And so that's why Jesus says later, kind of at the end, my Father's working until now, and so I am working. Okay, this is all like high-level view that Jesus and God knows, and the Jews are confused about, and even we're confused about. But Jesus is saying, look, I'm restoring. We're in the days of working now. Sabbath is all about completion. By Jesus healing a man and making him whole on the Sabbath day, it's a statement from Jesus saying, I am here actively restoring the creation, and it's going to be complete again. Heaven is going to be the Garden of Eden, and everything's going to be finished. So that's what he's saying with the Sabbath, and this leads us to the third takeaway. Jesus is actively restoring his creation. Now, imagine for a second what a creation without suffering would be like. Hard to imagine, huh? 2 Peter 3:13, it says, but according to his promise, we are waiting for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. I was reading that verse a while back, and I just thought, what in the world? What does that even look like where righteousness dwells? That's so hard to fathom because I'm only in a world full of unrighteousness. I'm only in a body full of unrighteousness. What would that be like to be in a world where it's only righteousness, like right living according to God's design? If you could imagine with me, you and I get to walk with God. We get to walk with him. No shame, no guilt. We see his face and we smile, and he sees us and he smiles. We just get to enjoy living in God's creation with God. Again, no more spiritual apathy, no more unfulfilled longings to see him, no more, as the Bible refers to as like groanings, waiting for. It's all fulfilled. It's all met. This world will be free of sin. No more people hurting people. No more hatred. No more division. No more gossip. No more untrue thoughts. No more wrestlings with sin. Society and the way that society is so messed up. You look around and you see all the decay in marriages or families. You could look at a whole population group and see the way that the enemy has like tricked them or lied them or pulled them all into sin. None of it. we will exist in perfect harmony, only ever building each other up and living together in peace. It'll be wonderful. I want to read the picture in Revelation 21, 1 through 5 for us, where John, same writer, gets this vision from Jesus about what this will be like. He says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away.' And he who was seated on the throne said, 'Behold, I am making all things new.'" Jesus is completing it. Moms, you'll never have to be afraid for your kids anymore. We'll never have to be anxious for anything. All your suffering wiped away, all your tears gone. This is why at the end of Revelation, the refrain is, "Come, Lord Jesus, come. Come." We long for this. And the only reason it's not come yet is because Jesus is saying, I've still got more restoring to do, and I've still got more people I want to invite in. But that day is coming soon, and it's as good as done. Now, there's a twist in the story. It ends hopeful. This is a story about a man who was lame for 38 years and his body restored. He starts outside the city and he's in the temple now. Jesus is making a statement, "I've come." This is a huge moment in redemptive history. And then we see the Jews. And the Jews find the healed man, and they are oblivious. It's the mood just changes, and I guess I'm stepping aside just to warn you, to put it in perspective. Not everybody's going to be open to Jesus's restoring work. There are some who will receive him, and there are some who will ignore it or deny. And so, verse 10, the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and it's not lawful for you to take up your bed." And we're like, "Are you kidding me? The guy is walking. He's been there 38 years. You could probably find a bunch of people that would substantiate this. We knew him. He couldn't walk, and now he's walking. And you're here arguing this little nitpicky tradition that you made up. God never said you can't take up your bed and walk if you've just been healed. But that's tradition speaking. The Jewish leaders are saying, listen, there's this little policy we have where it's the Sabbath, so you're not allowed to take up your bed. And so the man is stuck in between. Well, Jesus told me to do this, and you're telling me I can't. And so he's in an awkward position. So verse 11, he answered them, "The man who healed me, that man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" And they asked him, "Well, who is the man who said to you, 'Take up your bed and walk'?" Now the man who healed him didn't know that it was Jesus. Jesus withdrew. He went away. We skipped to verse 15. The man went away after he had that moment with Jesus, and he goes and tells the Jews, "Hey, guys, it was Jesus." And I don't think he was ill-intentioned, like trying to get Jesus in trouble. I think he assumed that their motives would be good too, and they would probably benefit from knowing who it was that healed. Maybe they wouldn't be so uptight anymore if they knew that this was Jesus. Anyway, verse 16. This was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, "My Father's working until now, and I am working." This was why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. So the Jews are hung up on tradition. They love tradition more than they love God. They're blinded to it. They can't see what's going on in redemptive history. If their eyes were open, they would look at this healing on the Sabbath and say, "Finally, Messiah's here. God's making all things right." It's happening. We get to witness. But they're blind to all of that. I heard a story once of a pastor who was kicked out of his church because they baptized a black man of lower social standing. And you'd have the same thing. You're like, are you kidding me? Really? The Bible talks about Jesus coming and making one new race, taking away the dividing wall of hostility. We get to live in the day where we're seeing it. And you're seeing it, and you're informed by tradition and blinded to what's happening. Jesus is saving every nation, language, and tongue. It's the same thing. Some people will see these things and confess, God is working. He's finishing his creation. And others will see it, and they'll be blinded by tradition. They'll be blinded by independence. They'll be blinded by what they think is right, how they see the world working, and they will not be able to experience Jesus' restoration. Basically, it's how John starts the book in chapter 1, verse 11. He introduces Jesus in the first chapter of this book, and he says he came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. You can come into the city. And this is telling us not everybody will come into the city. It's interesting. The Jews started out in the city, and they end up out of the city. And the man, the sufferer, the invalid, starts outside the city, and he will end inside the city because he confessed Jesus is God and he is working. Now again, it changes the whole mood. It brings us down, but let's not remember this wonderful truth. If you'll receive it, Jesus is still working in creation now to make everything right. He's going to finish it. It's going to be completed. He's recreating with his words. Just like in the creation story, he spoke and there was light, there was darkness, the expanse above, the waters beneath, animals, birds, humans, all with the word. He spoke. And now he's speaking. Get up, take up your bed, walk. Be free of sin, repent, believe. Don't do this. This is not good for you. Live this way. That is what's good for you. His words restore. They're still speaking, and one day it's going to be complete. Some final application. Next time you recognize the Sabbath, sit back and just remember. It's not necessarily about rest, although it is. But just remember, God's working, and he will finish everything. He doesn't need me to keep the world spinning. He's going to finish it, not me. It's restful, relieving. Those of you who you find yourselves in moments of being antsy or overwhelmed or life's a bit chaotic, God's working. He's going to finish everything. It'll all work out according to plan. Parents, it'll all work out according to plan. He's working. He'll finish it. This should cause us to work hard, to not sit back, knowing that our work, every effort we make for him is not in vain. It's purposeful. This should cause us to work hard and to be hopeful. Piper famously says, if you don't know John Piper, he says, God is always doing 10,000 things in your life, and you may be aware of 3 of them. God's working. So, concluding thoughts. Will you leap for joy with the man and be brought into God's restored creation? Or will you just stay stuck in where you're at, believe tradition, independence, your own way of thinking, and reject that Jesus is God himself, restoring creation, the only way in? And then Christians, take heart. Don't lose hope. Don't lose joy. It's all going to be finished. And also, I've just been praying for us. I think by remembering this, it really does change our perspective. Gives us a kind of hopefulness and joy and stability. Like we're not as tottering when we remember that God's the one that's going to finish all the work.